everyone, I'm back. Let's tag some people. Hi friends, come on in and allow me to tag some people. I'll start momentarily. Oh, I can search. Great. Okay. Hi, Keisha. I miss you so much. Now that I live closer to an actual airport, like one that's not private, we should totally meet up and see each other. I live in Atlanta now, so it will be great to catch up. Hi, Miss Q. Thanks for coming. So I'll start in like 30 seconds. You know, I don't want to waste anyone's time. I hope your family is doing well, Keish. Hi. Okay, so let's go ahead and start because I'm not just wearing makeup for Facebook. Actually, I'm going to come here barefaced most of the time. I actually have a conference today. This weekend is the Southeastern region for the Society of Biblical Literature and the Academy of Religion. We're pretty much having this regional conference for the Southeast region, and it's virtual. But I'm presiding over like 3 panels this time around, so I have 1 to do today and 2 to do tomorrow. So I can't be here long, but we'll go ahead and start. So today we're going to be talking about my really crazy seeing life. There's a reason why I call it crazy, because it's intense and it's crazy. And I hope I could share with you over time how crazy it really is. Today is more like an introduction to my seeing life because it's impossible to just talk about it all in one live. But I'll just start off with those things that people generally want to know, like how do you receive your prophetic impressions kind of thing? Why do you even use the term impressions? That kind of thing. So I'll start there. And if you guys have questions or comments, just, make them. I'm happy to answer some questions. And I'm sure you guys could also help me. So please do share comments if you have them. So hi, Miss Keisha. How are you? I'm back in Atlanta, so we need to meet up. Yes, ma'am. Okay, so what do I call impressions? Or why do I use the term impressions? I use the term impressions because one thing that a lot of people, in my opinion, get really, really wrong, extremely wrong, is that prophetic experiences, they do not reveal a definite future or a definite outcome. Oftentimes what we are receiving are potential outcomes. That therefore, like, prophetic impressions are really potential realities, and often that means that sometimes we have to do things, or things must occur for some of these impressions to come to pass. And I think a lot of people miss out on that. They have this dream about some random thing happening in one nation, and that just must be what God wills. That's not true. There are many, many realities. I think television teaches us this the most. actually, many different realities. And people who are prophetically sensitive, which is really truly all of us, because we all have a prophetic nature. We're all of a prophetic heritage, all of humanity, but also all of creation. There's that God infused prophetic nature that is in all of us. But I think the idea is often that we're seeing something definite, or that we're seeing God's will or God's heart, but often we're just seeing possibilities. And some of these things we don't want to happen, and other things we totally want to occur. And there's work that has to be done. Speaking of that work, there's work that you have to do to even just, decode all these impressions. So I call them impressions, and it kind of keeps me, understanding that all of this stuff that I'm talking about in this live lives in the realm of ambiguity. God is not in the black and white. God is in the gray. And so is all of this stuff. So yeah, I pretty much experience... I receive impressions probably with every sense, including knowledge. So I see, I hear, I've smelled, and have received prophetic impressions from that, or tasted or feel. But mostly I'm a feeler and a seer and a hearer. Oftentimes, one impression leads to the other. So I can start hearing and then I'll see something, or I'll start seeing and then I'll hear something. Or it will also just start with really strong feelings that is furthered by this knowing potential that I have. They're just things that I just have always just known. Yeah, so 6 senses, we generally talk about the 5 as they pertain to the natural. So like, seeing, hearing, feeling, or touching, right? Smelling. But there's also knowledge. Knowledge should be considered a sense, because it totally is one. So, yes, those are my impressions. Share your impressions down in the comments, or how you generally receive your prophetic impressions. I'm definitely interested. But I'm fairly prophetically sensitive. And so this pretty much means that life is not always the easiest. I don't necessarily think of myself as a moody person or anything like that, but I am definitely a hider. I only go where I need to go, and I'm often really quiet oftentimes, and I will certainly hide behind anything I could hide behind, including people. And that's typically how I've dealt with this, and I'm learning how to not deal with spiritual sensitivity that way. But it's really tough. There are places that are just really hard to go to, and I hinted at this in my first live, but church is one of those places. But it's also just random places that everyone has to go to, like the grocery store. Sometimes I feel like I live so much of my life alone. My potential is by the way, you can think of prophetic potential as kind of prophetic gifting, but I don't really like that term gifting, because it's not something that you have, it's something that you are, right? So it's just different. Your prophetic potential is a part of your identity. And when you think of it as a gift, it kind of makes it something that you can have one day and not have another. It doesn't work that way. Yeah, I could go into a grocery store, and it's that part of me is ooh, people, practice. And I get really overwhelmed really quickly, which makes going to the grocery store with people a little rough, because people like to take their good old time in the grocery store. Oh, Latoya, let's find this. Oh, where is that flour again? Oh, I need some yeast. My friend Florence does this all the time. She'll have me in the grocery store for, it was supposed to be 2-3 items, and we're in there for 10 items, and it is not the most comfortable experience, because people come burdened with so many things every single day. When you're conscious of those things, it's really tough. But in addition to that, there are things that people just have on their person every day, like clothing, just as we wear clothes every day. Most of us wear clothes every day. This is how people look in the spirit. People have things that adorn their bodies, you know, whether it's crowns or like elements like fire and water and wind. Sometimes there are people behind them or entities behind them. I don't like to identify these entities as what people call them, like angels or demons, because, you know, in the spirit, there are just entities. They're just you can just think of them as creations. And I think to identify them as angels is to actually limit what and who they really are, because the term just means messenger. So technically humans can be angels, but there are other entities, and sometimes they follow people. Sometimes they're all over people. Sometimes people are like surrounded by certain colors, for example, and these colors mean different things. Still trying to figure all of that out. But yeah, not always fun, but also not horrible either. The grocery store, that is. Church is almost always a little bit of a tough one, almost always, to be honest. And I think it's because what people have the tendency to do in church is, you know, they come to church, they come really guarded, and you feel all of that. And then at some point in the service, you know, they start to release some of their walls, and then you feel all of that. And then you start to see and be conscious of people's hearts. And some of that stuff ain't great, but also some of it is beautiful. You can kind of see what these people need or want. And what makes it miserable is when they leave still having those needs. So I've kind of been this person that I spent about almost 7 years of my life de-churched, starting around age 25 or so. And part of it was because of this. It was because, you know, handling a seeing life while regularly going to church was just really hard. And I felt hopeless. I felt like there was nothing I could do to make a change. I was just seeing this happen and feeling these things happen. And I couldn't stop it. On the other end of things, when I go to church, it's like, ooh, practice once again. So then not only do I have like ideas of what's happening in people, but also what's happening in the institution itself. So sometimes God gives me like sensitivity to concerning like the cracks in the foundation of these bodies, of these churches. And it's not all bad, but it ain't all good either. And I'm a fixer. I like to solve problems. So being in that position has also been pretty hard, because I'm just sitting there identifying, you know, these things that are just not okay, but I can't do anything about it. And I've tried to kind of live behind the scenes and do something about it, especially in the churches that I've personally been a part of, but I've just kind of realized that a lot of these things, you know, I can't change. You know, I can't change. And a lot of the problems that I found with my seeing life and outside of my seeing life to be problematic, that I've worked to create solutions for, I've just kind of realized that I might need to do that from the outside. Not meaning I'm not going to go to church anymore. I still go to church. I still have a church home. I still visit church from time to time. But just that I think my purpose is to kind of like be this consultant for the body of Christ more so. So not being balled and chained to any particular one ministry, but kind of being able to go in and out of various ministries and just kind of share what I'm seeing and help ministries meet their goals. Which brings me to a little sneak peek. I have an LLC now, just established in the state of Georgia, called eMerge&See Co. And it's a coaching and consulting company. So not only will I be helping people, you know, deal with the stuff I know really well, like vision, ideation, you know, finding career paths, finding or administrative services, and helping people through, you know, just these basic things that you need as a person or as a human, or as a business owner or leader or whatnot, helping people create analytical tools and things of that nature and meet their goals. But I'll also be creating ministerial toolkits that are personalized for each, various ministries, and it will allow me to not only utilize this potential in a way that could better these ministries, but it will also allow me to get an idea of what ministerial goals are and help them to incorporate 3 things that I think every single ministry needs. Every single ministry needs an intake process, and it's not, hey, we have new members, come to our new members class. No, that's not it. We need a process in place that's kind of like triage, like what you do when you go to a hospital. They check you out, they ask you questions, they kind of figure out what you expect. That's the kind of process that we need in these churches. We need people to be able to share their expectations of these ministries, and these ministries need to be very honest about whether they are actually able to satisfy those expectations, because people come in with expectations and they leave without them satisfied, and I think this process will kind of help people to realize that, church leaders to realize that, and I want to build out policies and regulations to help churches do that, and also other businesses, other ministries. But also the second thing that every ministry needs is a analytical process. The church takes everything from the world dealing with the finances, but good businesses have measuring tools that are there to help them figure out whether they are effectively meeting their goals. Surveys and other forms of analysis that are there to help ensure that they are actually giving their customer what they expect, and that does not exist in church. Quality needs to matter. Much more than quantity. So I want to help build out policies for that for ministries. And lastly, every ministry needs a decentered power structure. Every single one. So lots of this comes from my seeing life and very many years of seeing things and seeing how structures are. And it's just not healthy. It ain't good. And so it's my business. Just established. I'll be releasing the website this weekend and inviting all you lovely people to add my business page on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. I'm really excited, and I'm also going to be offering 2 or 3 ministries a free ministerial toolkit, because I want to be able to offer this to ministries, and I want to be able to offer it in a way that is of quality, which means that I need some pilot ministries who want to try me out, free of charge, but who are going to be really, really serious and really, really honest about letting me know what their goals are, letting me know the structure of their church, and allowing me the chance to offer some insight on how to restructure and help them meet their goals. Also, if you find yourself overwhelmed because you too are a seer and you just not doing it, well, I'm coaching for that too, because it took me so long to be able to, I haven't mastered anything. You never master anything in life. It's part of the human experience. But it took me so long to be able to, deal with things like oversensitivity. And it really sucks, you guys. It's really bad. There have been times I've been so overwhelmed, I have not been able to do work because I am unable to manage my existence in this realm of things with my existence in other spaces. And because I live in an apartment full of people, and for some reason, this potential just wants to be more active at certain times, and it's really, really hard to manage. But I've been managing for a while, so I have some tools and some techniques for those who are struggling with it. And also, I still struggle with this from day to day. And so the goal will also be to develop more techniques of how to deal with things like overstimulation and oversensitivity, and to grow together. So if you need help with prophetic and religious lifestyles, also go to eMerge&See.co.org. It will be launched once again this weekend, like tomorrow, most likely. Um, we've talked a little bit about hypersensitivity and my business and these impressions. So, one thing that people don't talk about that they should totally be talking about, there are lots of people who want prophetic encounters. Lots. You can have them. You are of a prophetic nature. You could totally have them. They're yours if you want them. But I will tell you that, like, living life in the spirit doesn't mean that you escape wounds and trauma. Like, it just doesn't mean that. I have PTSD from dreams and visions. And that's like the truth. I remember this one time, like, I can tell you the exact date. That's how traumatized I was. July the 2nd, 2007. I can tell you exactly where I was, too. I was at Spelman College. It was the summer. I was working their early college program, and I was an RA. It was really, really rough. But I had this horrible dream. And most people will call this a nightmare, but it wasn't. It was just a prophetic dream. And pretty much I saw an entire nation massacred. And then I saw the remnants from that nation rise up out of pure bitterness and pain and send out notifications to various nations of dates that they were going to come in and pretty much wreak havoc. And on those dates, like 30 minutes before the time of the havoc launching, all the TVs turned on, and you can see all of the horrible things they were doing in other nations that was coming to this nation I was sitting in 30 minutes. They were brutally killing, and it was just passion killing. That's all it was. They would kill, for example, a mother in front of a child and leave the child alive so that they could deal with the bitterness of having lost their mother, or vice versa, kill the child in front of a parent and leave the parent alive. Like, it was crazy. And all I could hear, all I saw or heard was like automatic guns, and it was just horrible. And then what do you have on the 3rd going into the 4th? Fireworks. That sound very much like automatic guns. So yeah, to this day, fireworks freak the crap out of me. I have to take deep breaths when I hear them and remind myself they are just fireworks, because it's rough. It is really rough. And 2 days, I would tell you that next day when we went to see the fireworks, something really bad happened to my mom and my dad. My mom was almost hurt. And it was just not a really good situation. And so not only was I overly sensitive to my mom's circumstance, but I was also literally traumatized from the fireworks that would not stop, that kept literally causing this dream to be repeated over and over and over and over. It was horrible. I see lots of death in my dreams and visions, but I also see really beautiful stuff too. Really amazing things. And I'm actually more conscious of angels than I am of demons. So if you're curious and you're wondering, oh, she probably sees all this doom, and, sometimes. But I actually see what we call angels, and demons I only sense. So I'm definitely on the lighter side of things. If there is such a side, I don't know. But there's a reason why I don't like to call them angels. And I'll probably just say that just a tad, because I'm just having a random conversation. Hi, Auntie. I saw you said hi. And thank you, Miss Q. And Onika, yes. Yeah, Holy Spirit is, chatty one. It almost seems as though whatever is easily accessible is the form of communication. And that includes people and nature. You can just be outside and oh, the wind is communicating a bit. Oh no, you see more demons than angels? Ugh. I have a cousin who used to see she used to always see demons and she never used to see angels. And I used to have to tell her, like, you could see demons, you can totally see angels. I mean, you just need to look at things differently. Look for something else. Yeah, I know it is for you, Mom, because y'all used to terrify me with the demonic entities you and Tiff used to see when we were younger. I was pretty happy that I wasn't really seeing demonic entities like that at that time. But, the ocean talk. Fun times. But, the whole angel thing is really, really interesting because once again, the spirit realm is super ambiguous. And we as humans, we like to think really dualistically and we have to have a label for something. And that makes things really, really bad, and it limits not only our ability to tap into and to maximize our potential, but it also limits our ability to really know God, because God is not sitting in the black and white. God isn't sitting in the black and white of the law or of any type of dualistic structure that we want to sit God in. God is actually in the large expanse that is called the gray. So, and that's kind of how things are in the spirit. So spirit doesn't, the activity of the spirit is, it's not based upon like breath. Like humans, we breathe and then that becomes a sign of our life, right? Our ability to breathe on our own. Even at some point when we're no longer able to breathe on our own, the idea is that our quality of life is so severely, impacted that we started to lose brain activity. And then once you end up in a vegetative state, the idea is that you're not even existing anymore. Something is existing for you, right? Because, in the human sense of things, breath is how existence is. But in the spirit, it's about connections. It's about relationships. And in this case, everything is just super duper active because everything is related and everything is thriving off of one another's relationships, kind of. So it's kind of really interesting in that sense. But this also means that our dualistic structures are just all wrong. Light doesn't always mean light, and dark doesn't always mean dark. So light beings that can be clothed in light could actually be really, negative entities. And entities that seem dark or ugly could actually be beautiful beings that are actually filled with light. So you can't necessarily judge things so dualistically as we do here in the natural. It's not how things are. The gray is, a lot safer than the black and white, to be quite honest. And this becomes my issue with calling spirit entities angels and or demons, because first off, this spirit beings are not separated by angel / or demon. Like, it's not either are you angel or are you demon. No, there are lots of spirit entities and different types of messenger like entities. They all look different. They all have different attributes. Some are like pure fire. Some have eyes that are like portals. Like, there are various entities out there. They're not all created the same. They're all not dressed the same. Different classes of entities too. Kind of like there are different humans, different types of humans. It's like a whole nother world, but it's not quite a world that's defined by, dualistic standards. There is no good when it comes to God. God is a God of justice. And sometimes justice looks like what humans call bad or evil. It doesn't always look like what humans call good. That's the crazy thing about justice. It sits in the gray. That is what God is. That is who God is. Super gray. Very gray. Yeah, scripture does support this. That book that you guys like to throw away called the Old Testament because no one understands it, that's where you need to go. And if you are one of these people who has tons, you have tons of prophetic encounters, that's also the place that you need to go. Like, the New Testament only tells you so much, but the Old Testament is where you actually get to see the lifestyle and the offices and the way that people actually, or prophetic types actually functioned, and the relationship that they had with God. And it ain't all, it's gray. Super duper gray. How do you ground this knowledge in the scriptures for the Bible-toting believer? Because yes. So I think one of the scriptures that instantly comes to mind is the brazen serpent, you guys. The brazen serpent in Numbers, I think 21 or 22. Pretty much the people complain, God is sick of it. And so God sends snakes. The same deity that heals them is the one who inflicted the hurt. God sends snakes, and the snakes start to kill people, and people are dying. So they're like, oh no, we sinned against you, Moses, and we sinned against God. Because Moses is so big and bad in this narrative, to sin against Moses is to sin against God. And what happens is God utilizes a material form of the same entity that was causing the death of the people to heal the people. God had Moses to build a brazen serpent and put it on a pole, and the people would look at the serpent and they will be healed. The same serpent that caused pain is the same serpent that healed. Serpents, all creation, kind of sits in the gray zone. And you guys, our medical symbol, it has a serpent in it. It's because serpents are always tied to things like, deception and suffocation and death. Sometimes they are tied to healing and insight and things that are much more beautiful than deception and death. So it's just one example that I could think of from the top of my head. Oh, let's talk about spiritual snooping, because I told you guys I was going to talk about that. You guys, when you have prophetic potential, it is really easy to snoop. I'm telling you, like, prophetic potential really loves to snoop around. It's like a natural snooper. But your girl don't like to snoop. I like to respect people's boundaries. And this probably reveals both my maturity and my immaturity, actually. So there was an instance, for example, I was getting my hair done at this girl's house, a random girl. I didn't know her. Her parents were like apostles and prophets and stuff. And I tell you no lie, like, within, I don't know, an hour of being there, I was spiritually in front of her parents' bedroom door. It was like, God, we're not doing this today. Nope. I took several steps back and made sure I was present inside of that room where she was doing my hair, because I wasn't going in there. And I ran into that lady like several years later, or not, maybe like a year or two later, and there was fire. Nonetheless, not the good kind. Nonetheless, it's really easy to snoop. And I think that boundaries is something that people need to talk about. So there are lots of things that, everyone's talking about. Oh, how do you increase your seeing life? Or how do you increase your prayer life? Or how do you increase your communication with God? But no one's talking about the trauma. No one's talking about the disrespect, the sheer disrespect of you just jumping up into people's business because you can. Like, no one's talking about the boundaries, because at some point you got to be able to have a bit of control, and you have to be able to say no. And no one's talking about how to actually, be trusted over your potential, right? You can think of I don't like this example, but it kind of works to help people understand. You can think of your prophetic potential as a light switch. as you grow, God gives you control over that light switch. You got to be able to turn it off sometimes. You just have to. Or think of it as a dimmer. You got to be able to dim that thing sometimes, because not only do you have to live, but in addition to all of that, you got to learn some boundaries. You can't just be stepping into people's private and intimate spaces. You know, sometimes you must, but there are just times where you just don't have to. And you gotta know that. You gotta know that it's okay to do that. Which brings me to maybe an example of my immaturity, actually. Sometimes I can walk right out of visual experiences. You know, I have a lot of control in my prophetic potential or with it. I could be having a vision, and then the moment I kind of get spooked or I get really uncomfortable, I can walk right out of it. I've done it several times, and people ask, "What? You could do that?" Yep. Huge sign of my immaturity, I'm sure of it. But also probably huge sign of the need for all of us to understand that we have a lot more control over these aspects of our personhood than we teach, than we understand. And also a huge lesson for me in understanding that the God who trusts me with this potential trusts me to be able to walk away when I need to, and to be present and remain present when I need to remain present. Which means I have to be discerning at all times. I have to discern whether I need to go through that door. And I also need to be able to discern when I need to deal with the discomfort and remain in the experience. Still learning this stuff, but you know, I wish there were people talking about this stuff. And because there aren't, I actually haven't heard many people in the church talk about it. I hear people, though, in the New Age movement talking about it, you guys. They talk about this stuff all the time. But the mere fact that you can't get this type of teaching from good old Christians is a problem. Hence, my new business, and hence this live. Ask me what you want. I will try to share. Yeah, I've been learning that it's harder to tune things out. The more I grow, but I think it's because as I grow, sometimes my access to that light switch is limited. So sometimes it's not easy, and it's especially when you are very sensitive. Like I've noticed that my spiritual sensitivity impacts my natural life. You could poke me and I'm gonna say ow. Ouch, excuse me, because I feel it. I really feel it deeply. It hurt. That little poke was painful. My family is a super loud family, you guys. They talk real loud. My ears hurt all the time. And sometimes I have to tell my mom and my sister, you guys are loud. You know, same thing with eyesight. I can go outside sometimes. I'm from Miami, Florida. We love the sun. I love the sun. I don't like this cold. You know, but sometimes I can't do the sun. Like my eyes really burn. I feel like sometimes my spiritual sensitivity kind of impacts my natural life in larger ways, and also in bodily ways, in ways concerning my own health, but also sometimes you feel pain that's not even your own, and discerning that is also really tough too. Discerning when the pain belongs to you and when it belongs to the person down the hall. You know, it's a lot easier for me to discern whether certain thoughts belong to me because I know how I think, you know, but pain is a whole nother thing. So, you guys have any questions or comments? My phone is blowing up, you guys. Told you there's this scholarly conference and lots of messages coming through. but nothing that's important right now. It's also my job. My job email comes to my phone. So, yeah, sure. So, I'm trying to think of a good example. When I was younger, I used to sense one of my god sisters' pain a whole lot. And her pain actually, she had sickle cell disease. I have sickle cell trait, and I have inflammation from that. And sometimes it was really hard to discern, in my early 20s, whether I was feeling her pain or my own. So that's kind of like an example. I'll feel, pain in my limbs or something like that, or I'll have a headache or something of that nature, have hay fever or something like that, and I wouldn't necessarily know why I don't feel well. Is it my allergies? Because now I have allergies. Now that I've lived in Tallahassee for 5 years, Tallahassee gives you allergies, you guys. South Georgia also gives you allergies. The pollen is horrible. But yeah, that's more so what it is. So feeling like a pain in your own body that might be in someone else's body, and needing to discern the difference. And normally when I am able to discern the difference, I just pray about it, and it does kind of fade. But nowadays, most recently, when I've seen people's discomfort, most recently it hasn't been something that I feel in my body. It's been something that I see. So I can see my vision will narrow in on a certain part of their body, and then I'll know. So I kind of prefer that actually than to feel pain. But yeah, it's an example of that. Any other questions? I'll also say this, because there was a choice between whether to have a conversation about this kind of stuff or a conversation about my sexuality. And so next conversation will be about my sexuality. But I think it's nice that this conversation came first, because I feel like a lot of people, that they live a lot of their life because of the relationships that they have with people, and that often has a lot to do with romantic relationships. I've never been in a romantic relationship, so I don't really have any of those experiences. But as you see, my scene life is an experience all on its own. Jesus is my boo. That's what it looks like. And this just means that, while a lot of people are like, girl, you ain't missing out on nothing, yeah, I'm thinking, come on over to this side of things. It's always wild over here, So people often think that my life is kind of boring, but it's because they don't know me. It's not all just business and fun. There's this part of my life that just, the doors seems to almost always be open. Sometimes depends. It depends. Really, really depends. Sometimes they are vivid enough for me to almost be in a place, existent in a place. Now, I'm still very conscious of everything that's going on around me. A lot of people, think that to have many visions is to enter into many trances. I can't think of one time I've ever been in what people call a trance. And in fact, I'm not really sure that that's something that really truly happens in the way that people say that they happen, because there's a part of me that truly believes that God wants use of all of our faculties, and that our consciousness is important. So there are lots of things that I'm learning about, the need to understand what it means to really be fully present, and to really be conscious. Those are really important conversations that everyone needs to have, but especially people who have prophetic impressions, many of them at least. So I've never had a trance. So in my visions, I am completely present in the place that I'm in, and I can hear and see everything. I can even interact in the space that my body is in, but I'm also existent somewhere else. And so, yeah, sometimes it's so vivid. I can be somewhere else. I can smell what it smells like to be there. I can feel what it feels like to be there. But oftentimes it's just like a consciousness, and I'm not really sure what's really at work, if it's the knowing consciousness that is there that produces the sight, or what. But sometimes I can just be knowing something and all of a sudden see what I know. That makes any sense? So sometimes it's not as vivid as others, but they're both, to answer that. And I would say some of the most vivid experiences I've had with my prophetic potential actually has been, they're with sight, but they're also not with sight, like just things that I hear. Like there's this thing that I call in a book that I write called like The Cry of the Nations, and it is horrible, you guys. Like it's almost like being in one space, like a small room, and all you hear is all of these voices like praying, crying, screaming, all at the same time. And you're just sitting there. You can't get it out of your ears. It's just there. What I started being able to do a few years ago, because this has been happening for a really long time, a few years ago, I started being able to isolate some of those voices. So almost like utilizing my eyesight or my ears as like a camera. You know how you can like zoom in and then zoom out of a camera? Sometimes I could do that with my prophetic impressions, and I can focus in on one of those voices. And sometimes I could also do that with sight. So I could like zoom out and see a larger picture, or zoom in and focus on one specific thing. I need to practice more of that, because my friend here, Onika, is always telling me, oh, what else? She's always like, what do you think that means? Oh, what else is there? What else did you see? And I'm just real lazy nowadays. I don't want to do any more work. So I haven't really been using that potential in a really long time. But normally when I do that, I find a lot more peace, because the other voices kind of die down a little, and I'm able to hear that one voice. And sometimes out of hearing that one voice, I now know how to pray. But oftentimes the cry of the nations is something I can't really evade, because, it's not just because of the plea of one person. There's something larger happening, a larger system, a larger activity at play, that is resulting in all of these discomforts. So, for example, the tsunami in Japan, I saw that, but I first heard the cries embedded in that tsunami, and then I saw waters overtaking people, and I didn't know where it was happening. I had a feeling it was somewhere in Asia, but I didn't know where. So that kind of thing happens all the time, but the cries often are large, a part of something much larger. Yes, they do. At some point when I had started talking to someone about it, I would hyperventilate sometimes for some reason, especially when she would ask me to, prophesy or something like that. I would hyperventilate. They do definitely trigger anxiety. A lot of my anxiety or my overstimulation or any of that, it's not due to the natural stuff. Like, it's Jesus. I blame Jesus for everything. Now you know why. But it's not bad. I really I really enjoy my seeing life. I know I can't exist without it. I actually had a dream that helped me to realize that I could not exist without this, and that there is something really special and unique about the way that I see. And I'm still trying to figure out what that uniqueness is, but but it's something that I have to learn to live with. And I mean, I'm cool. I'm happy. I'm not depressed. I don't think I've ever really been depressed in my life. I think I just started realizing what depression might look like for me, and it probably looks like just temporary sadness for other people. But for me, it's real deep, and it's for me, that little small bit of sadness is super big, and it's mostly related to my seeing life. It's never related to anything else. Yeah, it is. But thank you, Miss Q. It is special. I'm thankful. But I'm also really honest with God, and I tell God that sometimes this sucks all the time. And I've actually have been really big about like looking for some kind of coach or teacher or something of that nature. And they don't quite exist in the open. So another reason why I've started this coaching company, because I've been learning over time that I have to become what I'm lacking, because there are other people out there who need this. And, I'm equally silent about it, not knowing that there are other people out here who can help me. I'm sure those people are within arm's length of me, and they're just not saying anything. So maybe if I break the silence, we'll all come out of hiding, and we'll all share. So, it's been about 50 minutes. Any other questions? Starbucks is like crack, you guys. It's so good. Okay, well, I love you guys. Stay tuned for the sexuality talk. And then after, Jabari gave a great idea about blending the two. I do have like lots of philosophies on sex, sexuality, and spirituality, because God talks to me about sex, actually. It's really weird that God would talk to a person with a V card about sex, and someone who's completely not interested and repulsed kind of by it. But I will share my philosophies on sex and sexuality, and a lot of that has to do with what it means to actually be present, what it means to be conscious of one's own self and one's own volition. So it also has a lot to do with consent and what consent really looks like in spirit. And there are lots of spiritual violations that happen with that act, but you think you're scotch-free in marriage, but you're not. Like, spiritual violations occur all the time in marriages on account of sex. So we'll talk a little bit about that, maybe in the second live or the third live, because this is technically the second. But I might just talk about my sexuality in the third live, and then in the fourth live we'll blend the two, something like that. But yeah, thanks for coming, you guys. If there are no more questions or comments, I guess I'll talk to you later. I hope you guys have an amazing Saturday and a great weekend. And if you have questions that you don't want to say on the live, that you just want to message me personally, totally message me personally. I'd love to chat with you. Love you too, Mommy. Okay, love you guys. Bye. Thank you, Auntie.